Hello, today is Tuesday, August 24th, 2021. I'm Joe Schmidt from TC2, and this is Staying Connected. Well, it happened again. Another company hack that has gotten that company in big trouble. For the fifth time in 3 years, T-Mobile, the nation's second largest wireless carrier, has suffered a data breach that exposed highly sensitive personal information, also known as PI, affecting some 53 million current and past customers, as well as others who may have applied for T-Mobile accounts and been denied. Perhaps most alarmingly, it appears T-Mobile wasn't aware it had been hacked until it read on the tech website Motherboard that the hackers were offering to sell the PI they stole for Bitcoin valued at around $270,000. Worryingly, the hackers claim to have already sold the first batch of data. So on today's podcast, I'm joined by my buddy and a partner at LB3, Kevin DiLallo, and we are going to take a closer look at what the hack means and offer up some much needed guidance to help you protect your company and your data. Hey, Kevin, thanks for joining me today. So what happened at T-Mobile?
Hey, Joe. Well, T-Mobile systems are obviously not sophisticated enough to have detected the hack, which is pretty scary. We still don't know how long the hackers have had the data. They claim to have exploited vulnerabilities in T-Mobile's wireless data network to get access to 2 T-Mobile customer data centers. Apparently, they hit the jackpot because T-Mobile didn't encrypt the PI, and it commingled a wide variety of individuals' different identifying information, including names, social security numbers, dates of birth, and driver's license information, all in one place. So it was easy for the hackers to assemble a portfolio of sensitive identifying information from a single source.
You know, Kevin, it sounds like there are so many lessons to be learned from this debacle for enterprise customers, both in their role as customers of wireless services, as well as their role as collectors and processors of their own customers' personal information. You know, and thinking about it, there are probably lessons for all of us who use mobile devices on a daily basis. Before we get into the lessons learned, how about if we take a look at the fallout from this breach?
Sure. Besides the PR disaster, T-Mobile is facing 2 class action lawsuits in federal court in Washington state, where it's based, as well as an investigation by the Federal Communications Commission. The Federal Trade Commission, which polices companies that mislead the public about their data handling practices, hasn't indicated whether it will bring an action against T-Mobile, though one certainly seems warranted. The FCC, which regulates telecom common carriers, is also responsible for enforcing Section 222 of the Communications Act. That section protects customer proprietary network information, or CP&I. CP&I is sensitive information about how a customer uses telecom services. It's not synonymous with personal information such as social security numbers or driver's license information, but the information is sensitive nonetheless. The Commission has the authority to fine carriers up to $150,000 per violation and to order them to take certain corrective actions or to refrain from other actions.
You know, as I mentioned at the start of this podcast, this isn't T-Mobile's first, or shall I say, issue.
Oh, no. T-Mobile has been crosswise with the FCC a few times. Last year, the agency proposed a fine of $91 million against T-Mobile for allegedly sharing customers' location information with third parties improperly. Hey, by the way, listeners, keep an eye out for our upcoming podcast on location tracking in mobile apps, which we will be releasing soon. The FCC also fined T-Mobile $200 million in the past year for allegedly abusing the Universal Service Fund program for low-income customers. And in 2014, the FTC, Federal Trade Commission, forced the so-called uncarrier to reimburse customers $90 million for unauthorized third-party charges posted to their wireless bills. This is a good time to remind our clients that you should always advise your wireless carriers, either in your service agreements or in some other formal writing, that you will not allow any charges for third-party goods or services or contributions to nonprofits to be posted to your wireless account or those of your corporate liable users. This is your right under federal law, and failing to block these charges could lead to an avalanche of them, as history shows.
What about the state data protection acts that we've been talking about on these last few podcasts?
Well, the California Consumer Privacy Act, which we've told clients about for the past couple of years, figures prominently in each of the class action suits, which were brought by California residents. The CCPA, as we call it, allows plaintiffs to receive statutory damages of between $100 and $750 per consumer per violation, or actual damages, whichever is greater. With potentially millions of California residents affected, these amounts will add up fast. In addition, the class actions allege that T-Mobile acted negligently and recklessly in that it knew its systems were vulnerable, but it failed to take action to secure its customers' information. They also allege that T-Mobile violated its own privacy policy and other representations to its customers regarding the steps it takes to protect their personal information. T-Mobile's privacy notice states that the carrier employs, and I'm quoting, administrative, technical, contractual, and physical safeguards designed to protect customer data while it is under our control, close quote. Whether or not this statement is misleading or inaccurate will be a question for the jury if the case doesn't settle first. Now, these latter categories of allegations, negligence, recklessness, failure to comply with a company's own privacy policies and statements, these are all potential legal challenges that any company can face, as they're not dependent on statutes or jurisdictional or sector-specific regulations such as HIPAA. Thus, one of the lessons all enterprise customers should take away from this data breach is the importance of ensuring that your company scrupulously follows its own privacy policies and other public statements regarding its use, collection, protection, and disclosure of consumer information. The FTC has advised U.S. businesses with respect to customer data to, quote, say what you do and do what you say, close quote. In other words, if you share customer data with third parties, you should disclose that. If you don't encrypt customer data, don't tell your customers that you do. It's very simple. One of the class actions alleges that T-Mobile failed to meet industry standards for the protection of customer data, and it pointed to a 2016 FTC publication entitled Protecting Personal Information, A Guide for Business, which is available on the FTC's website. The plaintiffs claim that T-Mobile failed to follow the basic guidelines from the FTC, as well as other industry organizations who have published recommendations for safeguarding consumer information. By the way, if your company hasn't reviewed the FTC publication, we recommend that you download it soon. It's full of sound advice.
You know, Kevin, selfishly, I'm ticked at T-Mobile because they were starting to gain some traction with our clients and other enterprises, and this may have set them back.
Well, Joe, T-Mobile is the second largest U.S. wireless carrier, but it's a distant third in the enterprise market. There are several reasons for this, among them that it has focused almost exclusively on the consumer market. Even its rate plans are designed with individual consumers and not corporate customers or their employees in mind. Second, T-Mobile's sales and legal staffs don't have much experience dealing with enterprise customers or the level of service those customers demand. It's been a somewhat painful learning experience for them and for us as we try to educate them about the heightened levels of security, accountability, and performance that enterprise customers require from their carriers. Data security and privacy protections have been particularly difficult for T-Mobile to accept, but this recent data breach highlights the need for such provisions as never before. So our advice is this: don't fold. Insist on reasonable protections and remedies, but also be realistic. No carrier is going to agree to uncapped damages for security breaches. A super liability cap, that is, one that's higher than the general limitation of liability, is more likely to be acceptable to T-Mobile or any other carrier. Also, it helps if you articulate the types of damages for which the carrier will make the enterprise customer whole, such as the cost of credit monitoring for affected employees, the cost of notifying potentially affected employees of data breaches, and the cost of any regulatory proceedings, including fines, that your company gets dragged into as a result of the data breach. Another lesson for enterprise customers coming out of this breach is to avoid two-factor authentication that relies on the sending of a code to an employee's mobile device. Instead, use an authenticator app such as those available from Microsoft or Google, or a physical security token. The reason for this is that the hackers in this cyber attack were able to get both the International Mobile Equipment Identity, or IMEI, number and the International Mobile Subscriber Identity, or IMSI, number for millions of devices. These numbers can enable the hackers to move subscribers' phone numbers under their own control, a trick known as SIM swapping, and that would allow them to view any security codes that a vendor or a financial institution might send to the mobile telephone number as part of two-factor authentication. The potential damage from this kind of trickery is almost unimaginable.
Okay, so what should individual employees be doing?
For individual employee users of T-Mobile services, and this includes corporate liable users, there are a number of steps that each should take right now to protect his or her identity, credit, and accounts. First, they should log into their T-Mobile accounts and change their PINs and their passwords. The new passwords should be difficult to guess, maybe a random phrase. Second, they should immediately freeze their credit with the 3 major credit reporting agencies, Experian, Equifax, and TransUnion. This is a free service, and it will prevent bad actors from using stolen credentials to obtain credit. Third, they should enroll in T-Mobile's account takeover protection service to prevent SIM swapping. And then finally, they should register for one of T-Mobile's Scam Shield offerings.
Okay, thanks, Kevin. As Kevin just highlighted, whether your company is collecting consumer data or worried about how T-Mobile or other companies will use the data they collect from your employees, there is a lot to learn from the T-Mobile data breach. And this is the perfect time to review your own internal procedures to make sure you aren't as vulnerable to hackers or allegations of negligence as T-Mobile. If you want more insight from Kevin, please give him a call or shoot him an email. You can also contact Kevin, me, or any of our LB3 and TC2 colleagues if you'd like to discuss other ICT topics. And as always, you can stay up to date by subscribing to these podcasts, checking out our websites, and by following us on LinkedIn.